I'm Dr. Pete Economo, the East Coast psychologist,
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin, the West Coast psychologist.
and this is When East
Meets West.
Pete, we've been dancing around doing this episode for a while, which is very funny because today we're going to be talking about decision making, and we couldn't decide when we were going to talk about decision making. Which,
Oh.
I was like, man, we gotta identify the irony in that, right?
Well, because you and I are funny. I'm like, no, you make the decision. No, you make the.
I know.
I am tired of making decisions.
I know. If only folks could see what we're doing before we hit the record button, right? We're like,
Which is not much.
I don't know. Yeah, which is not just like chatting. Yeah. So we did a good job. We made a decision to talk about
decided.
decision making. Yeah. So one reason we did want to talk about this topic is this is something that I would say comes up pretty frequently clinically as like a presenting issue. And for those of you listening to this episode, you may have clicked on this because you're like, yeah, I struggle with decision making. So look, to be clear, everybody struggles to make decisions sometimes. Like, I don't want to paint a picture that, some people are just, make a decision like that. They have no problem. Everybody
Yes.
like goes over things and struggles to come to a conclusion of what they're going to do. However, there's some people that get really paralyzed by decision making. So I'd like to start there. Like, what is your experience about like why that is? Like, both from like, I would say, a human brain perspective, but also maybe some of the environmental factors of the current era that we live in.
Well, I think you'll mess with my metaphor. So I always ask people,
Okay.
I ask clients to think about like going shopping for jeans. When you go jean shopping, there is an endless wall of all different styles and types and whatever. I can't even, cuts and no cuts. There's lots of choices. And I think
There's
the choices kind of facilitates this paralysis.
Yes, no, I like that story very much. I don't have that problem because I love jean shopping. So that's an area I don't
Do you
struggle
really?
to make decisions. Oh yeah, I love jean shopping. I do it online mostly, but I kind of know it. So but I understand why somebody would. I will use it that way, and I certainly would if I go into a store and see that wall. I could feel overwhelmed. So, like we live in a society, where and it's like. The choices are endless. They're not just the wall of jeans. It's not in your phone. You could go to any site and it's like there's like 1,000
Wait, I want to
options.
go. I want to stick on your shopping for a second. So so the online shopping I love, but then I end up getting then the same pant over and over again because I know that they fit. Like, do you explore with different fits and all that too?
Yeah, I like different washes and
So then you
cuts
try, and then when you try them on, if you don't like them, you just return them.
yeah, return them.
And then is that like at a UPS store, a Whole Foods? Like, how does that?
I mean, it's not that, but yeah, you have to go to you. I mean, that's the annoying part, but yeah,
That's
the
enough
part.
to paralyze me.
Yeah. Okay, fair. Yeah, fair. So, but that would be more like where we're getting into like the hassle of things, right? But I guess
Yes.
we could say like that could add to like another layer of what
Yeah.
makes decision making difficult. So it's like, first we're saying there's like almost seemingly infinite choices,
Yes.
like with the internet and like,
Yes.
and we live in a society of stuff, right? And so
Yes.
it's like so there's that piece. There could be the hassle of like, our brains don't like to do things that are uncomfortable. So
Yes.
and you'd probably like to go to a store like, here's one pair of jeans. This is the pair of jeans for you. This is going to look good, feel good, last for a long time. But instead, there's like a lot of factors, at play. And so, so this, and then I would say, so this intersects with the way our brains are wired. And we talk about this a lot on When East Meets West, which is our brains are designed to problem solve.
Yes.
And, and the problem with problem solving is that, while it works really well in a lot of contexts, we can't solve things like what other people are thinking. We can't figure that. We can't get rid of our emotions. And in this case,
let's stick with that. Let's stick with what other people are thinking. I love that you just said that. So do you think that that's part of the paralysis because people are trying these jeans on or thinking about it and they're really worried about how they're going to be seen? In that example,
it could be, yes. And I think that with decision making, when people struggle with it, the actual crux of the problem is trying to solve for an outcome.
Yes.
And the outcome, wanting to solve for what's going to be the quote unquote right decision, the right outcome. I need to figure out, I'm going to think through all the things that could happen in this moment. So what are the right genes?
Yeah.
So this is where we get paralyzed because, as Pete and I always talk about, newsflash, guys, that's imaginary information.
Sure
we actually cannot know how, like, you don't know what those genes are going to feel like or fit like until you actually try them on.
Yeah. Well, and I know someone's just listening like mid episode. They're like, why are these two psychologists talking about genes? So you could substitute genes for job, house, tile, partner, like any decision that one is making, there are multiple options. And so you might, what I was hearing, what you were saying is also like people feel like it's the last decision almost. Like it feels, sometimes decision making feels like it's like so big.
Yes. Well, because again, it's like this thing that our brains do that they say there is a right.
Yes.
And then the myth our brains will tell us is that if we think about it enough, we'll be able to figure out what that right outcome is. We'll be able to, and another thing people say to me all the time, they'll say, I've thought through so many things. And I'm like, sure, but here's the truth. Like that doesn't actually tell you what's going to happen.
No.
So that's where people get really paralyzed. And so, decision making is risk taking.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you feel it is risky. I mean, it feels risky. When you said people have thought through everything, the word that popped in my head straight away was obsess. So there's lots of people who then give themselves permission to obsess, because they're like, well, I'm just trying to think of every possibility to make, and I'll say, like, working with high performers, you will kind of, I think about this sometimes like a superpower. Their obsessional thinking or thinking about every option sometimes is why they're successful. And so it's not such a bad thing to think about options. It's just that you don't want to get paralyzed. And so the goal is, how do I take back some power so I'm not paralyzed, but I can actually make an informed decision?
That's such a great point, Pete, because yes, it's not that, I definitely don't want anyone listening to this to think like, oh, I just don't think through anything. Just like go through the world, like do without thinking. It's like,
sometimes I wish I could, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure, totally. So it's not that like thinking through is inherently bad, right? It's not. It's that if we think through believing that will tell us what will happen, that's where we get stuck.
Yes.
So the way to use thinking through, notice I'm saying that, not problem solving, right? Thinking through, right? Like sifting through potential options, is while simultaneously dialectically holding the truth that whatever thing you land on that you're going to do, that you decide, this feels aligned to me, I'm going to try this. That's all you're doing. You're trying it, making a decision. That's what I'm saying. I'm being it's a risk. I don't mean that. I don't mean risk. I'll be clear. Sometimes I think we hear the word risk as danger, right? Look, there are calculated risks that we take that are very healthy. A risk is, we're just acknowledging we don't control the outcome. We're going to try something and see what happens, right? So to go back to what you said about people kind of get attached to this idea that it's like the final decision, like there's nothing else. I think that's so important, because the idea of like, when we make a decision, we're going to see what happens and then we can make another decision.
That's right.
Like if it's like, I remember having a conversation once where somebody was like paralyzed. They were using it as it's kind of a, seemingly silly example, but they were trying to illustrate what their brain does. And they were telling me they could get really caught like on Amazon, like say, like trying to decide between different toasters or something.
Oh, totally.
And saying like something like that. And it was like reading all the reviews and like, and then cross-referencing and all these things. And then what if I don't like it or doesn't work so well? And so what we were talking about is like, look, I'm not saying like, maybe you like skim and see these are the top rated ones or whatnot. Fine. Do a little bit of research about it. But what I had said to this person was, at some point you just buy the toaster. And if the toaster comes to you and you don't like it, okay, you return it, or and then that's a hassle, whatever. Sure. But it's not, this isn't it's not the last decision, to your
Well,
point.
because a value-based decision is if you want to toast your bagel on the East Coast, you have to have the toaster. So it might not be the best toaster because our bagels are better. Just good.
I won't dispute that. That's 100% correct. There is an up and coming LA bagel scene that has been written about. I will have to say that, but I agree. I'm not, that's my only little thing I'll add in there, but yes. Yeah, well, but I think, okay, because the bagel example might get a little confusing when people are thinking, how is that a values-based decision? So
Yeah.
I think if we speak more broadly, it's like our values are, again, are what brings us a sense of meaning, of purpose, of connection, warmth, groundedness, the sense of being vital, right? So steps in a direction of a value, right? It doesn't mean that step, that destination is gonna be comfortable each time. Like if you're like if you're gonna like, I don't know, like you're gonna sail, I mean, from California to Japan, right? That would be a really like long, difficult trip to do. You might plan out, Dustin, maybe you're going to stop in Hawaii. Maybe you're going to like, whatever, there's certain markers along the
Yeah.
way. It's not, if things start to go awry, if you get like pulled off course or like, you hit weather or whatever, it's like, that's okay. Like that doesn't get in the way of continuing to like move forward and reroute, or you make a mistake and I don't know what, I'm not a sailor, so this analogy is gonna fall apart here. But
No, your point is
but
well taken. I mean, yeah, you get back on course. I'm not a sailor either. And
yes,
they use different
yeah,
numbers. Like it's
they do. I don't like knots. I don't like
knots.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like I don't know. It's funny because I do use a sailing metaphor a lot, but this episode just illustrated where that analogy starts to crumble for me. But yeah, yeah. But the point is like it's okay. We haven't
Yeah.
used this word yet. It's okay to make mistakes in decision making.
Yeah. I'm hearing every
Yeah.
client that's saying, but Dr. Rubin, I mean, this house is, $700,000. Like that's a big mistake.
Yeah, so this is where I say to people, like, look, I guess in that I'll say big decisions, really big decisions, like
Yeah.
spending a lot of money purchasing a home or choosing a life partner,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? Or moving to another country or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
big decisions. Yeah, like the stakes are higher.
Stakes are high. Yeah.
Absolutely, the stakes are higher. And so it's scarier.
Yeah.
And I don't want to invalidate that or say that making a mistake, it's like, oh, it's just all okay and no big deal, right? Like
No.
mistakes can have consequences, right?
Yeah.
What we would hope is if you're making a really big decision, that's something that there's been a lot of intentional, mindful consideration around, that you've
Yeah.
gathered data, you've done something responsibly, you know, it's buying a home. I mean, hopefully, like
Yeah.
you have enough money. It's a sound financial decision. If it's a life partner, hopefully you've done the work to get clear about what you need and what you want, right? That you're
Yeah.
not just impulsively doing these things. To be
Yeah.
clear, that being said, it could still not turn out the way that you want.
Yeah, and that's the Eastern principle of middle path. You want to try and find the middle path of gathering information to make an informed decision, assessing your risk for the cost benefit, living with your values, and that nothing's forever. So, that's something that's hard for people, but that spiritual belief that sure, I might make a mistake that this is the wrong house, or, I might make the mistake that this is the wrong life partner. Like if over 50% of our, domestic population is divorced, for some, that's enough of a fear to paralyze them in the decision-making process, for their next partner. The economy,
Well,
go ahead.
totally. Well, I was going to say, I think we have to be careful a little bit when how we talk about like nothing is forever, because I think this is also where people get very nihilistic,
Yeah.
because then it's like nothing matters. Like, well, then I shouldn't make any decisions, or it doesn't matter. I should do just everything without
Right.
thinking because it's all going to like crumble or whatever. It's like, so I think that, I mean, yes, obviously the middle path is balancing how you're, we're talking
All of
about
that.
being thoughtful and taking a risk, right? Though I think the important thing is when Eastern philosophy is talking about, and obviously particularly in Buddhism, talking about things being impermanent, it's that and this is, we need to do another episode on this. We're not going to be able to fully get into this today, but
it's on our list. Yeah.
It's on our list, is that this moment is not permanent.
Yeah.
Right. This moment is not permanent. And so what I say to people often is like, all we can do to make a decision is use the information from everything in the past up until this moment in time. And then what we hope to do is make a decision in this moment in time from that information and from our values. And then we're trying to move our lives forward. Like it's not, we're making these decisions in the service of living a life that we want to build for ourselves. And also radically accepting that in that process, in that ongoing process, we're going to stumble, we're going to make mistakes sometimes, and trusting that if that happens, that even if there's a big mistake, even if something's really hard, that we can come back and we can keep rerouting. So I think that's, I know it's difficult to end kind of on this piece. We've got to do.
It's really good advice. It's good advice, though. I mean, I'm thankful for it, but it's very good advice.
Yeah. So it's just I want folks not to sort of pendulum swing here between like I've got to dig into my problem solving about decisions or nothing matters. So for our listeners, if you're struggling with a decision, right, I would say give yourself pause, right? Identify what you know, try to practice accepting what you don't, and see if you can just take the next step and see what happens.
This has been When East Meets West. I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin.
And I'm Dr. Pete Economo. Be present, be brave. This has been When East Meets West. All material is based on opinion and educational training of Drs. Pete Economo and Nikki Rubin.
Content is for informational and educational purposes